Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Actually talking. So thank you so much. And good evening. I'm so glad you guys are all with us tonight. As Jean Marie said, we're on a path. We're taking our next steps. We're talking about the spiritual journey. We're talking about the hero's journey. We're the focus of that hero's journey. We're the heroes, and we're becoming and changing and exploring. No matter how long you've been on this path, you know that the path just continues to go into the horizon, doesn't it? It just continues to evolve. And actually, to me, that's the good news. That's really the exciting part, is that we're on a forever journey, and we're all on it together. And there's really no harm, no foul. We can make mistakes, and we do, and we learn, and we grow. And in fact, my grandson told me something just this week. He was saying something about making a mistake, and he goes, "It's okay if you make mistakes." He says, "You just learn from them." And I was like, "Where did you get that pearl of information from, that piece of wisdom?" I hope it was his teacher. So I'm so excited to know that this is something that we can just give ourselves permission to be on. And so tonight, what I'm going to be talking about, the aspect of the journey that I think can often be a challenge depending on where we are on a potential polarity, which is when to act, how to act. And some of us have preferences, or we have conditioning, where when we have a challenge or where something has been in front of us, some of us jump in and try to make some changes. We might not know exactly what we're doing, but we're anxious to change it because it's not right, it doesn't feel good, it's messed up, it needs to be fixed, somebody's wrong, something needs to get corrected, right? And so our comfort zone is really in, tweaking things, making things happen, talking to people, shaking stuff up. Even if we don't exactly know what to do, we feel better if we can at least release some energy in that direction. And sometimes we end up making things worse, and sometimes we end up stepping on toes, and we have to go back and clean up messes, unless we don't. And then there's that. But there is that, that part of us that sometimes it must work often enough that we keep it up, right? And then there's others of us that are really afraid of doing that terrible, no good thing. And so we stand back and we kind of watch and we listen and we wait. And sometimes you find, if you don't do anything at all, sometimes it just kind of fixes itself, right? Things just kind of fall into place, or you can tolerate that level of discomfort for a long period of time. And so sometimes you find, though, that things fall apart because you don't act, or because you're unsure, or because you don't take action. And so that isn't necessarily the always go-to best idea either. And so spiritual mastery is really when we are not run by the conditioning, but rather capable of having the freedom of responding to conditions. Right? Of being able to expand our toolbox, expand our souls, our hearts, and be able to move when we need to move, when we get the hit that this is the thing to do, and I now see my part and I can take action in right time and in right ways as best I can. And the other times is when I'm not still sure exactly what I can add, and I'm okay with stepping back and watching and listening and waiting to see what happens. Because this is actually the part, and anything in that continuum, anything along that continuum of activity, action, no action, taking a piece, talking to somebody, making a change, whatever that is. It's also mostly about asking ourselves, how shall I respond to this situation according to the truth I know? It's only from my perspective. I can't be expected to know something I don't know. I can't be expected to be omniscient or omnipotent in this situation or in any one of them. And so whatever it is that is mine to do is exactly Karen-sized. It's exactly connects with my gifts and my piece of the puzzle. And it's only my ego that thinks. It's an overblown sense of responsibility that thinks I somehow have to control the whole picture, make everything work together, help everybody, make everybody happy, fix everything, make everybody the way it makes me feel better. It's only my ego that messes me up, really. Because what's expected of me in the big picture is really what is easiest for me to bring, myself. And the more that we can recognize that we are worthy and that we are enough and that we are being guided and that we're not alone in this journey at all, which is what this whole series is really about. It's about how we are all on it, therefore we're all on it together, that we are also part of a great dance with something greater than ourselves that is I would say using us, but is flowing through us, that we are instruments, we are channels for that powerful presence and for that life force to really be visible in the world. And that as we allow that, coordinate with it, work with it, and be willing to step up when we're afraid, ready to sit back and trust when we don't know, is the ways in which we actually dance this great dance into the horizon of our great journey. Putting principle into practice. Mike Norton says, never say that you can't do something, or that something seems impossible, or that something can't be done, no matter how discouraging or harrowing it may be. Human beings are limited only by what we allow ourselves to be limited by, our own minds. We are each the masters of our own reality, and when we become self-aware to this, absolutely anything in the world is possible. In Matthew chapter 17, there's a story where Jesus and his apostles, who were attempting to practice some of the things they had witnessed Jesus doing, some of the things he'd shown them, and some of the things he encouraged them to go out and practice doing, some healing and some prayer. And so here's a story at that opportunity. It says, when they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. He said, "Lord, have mercy on my son. He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him." Jesus replied, "You unbelieving and perverse generation." Doesn't that sound just like Jesus? That just sounds like something he would say. That Jesus. "How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me." I think it sounds like Jesus had a pretty hard day that day. So Jesus rebuked the demon. It came out of the boy. He was healed in the moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, "Master, why couldn't we drive it out?" He replied, "Because you have so little faith. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." This idea that somehow there is something planted deep within us that is that part, that is that connection, that is the place where the right words, the right action, as we said, the right-sized amount of presence will come through us. What Jesus' frustration was is that he was doing this work for so long, he's trying to teach his disciples that somehow they still didn't know it was coming through them, not from them. That they were not connecting up with something where the real power was. Leonardo da Vinci said, "It had long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things. You know, do something." So you've got the two, you've got the yin, the yang. You've got the ones that are standing back and are unsure of themselves, and the ones that are not necessarily taking action, kind of waiting for something to come, some bigger inspiration. But then there's also the one where you have all the inspiration you need because you already have the desire, you've got the picture. And all you have to do is overcome the fear of judgment, of others, of failing, of not knowing, and be willing to step out there. These are the polarities. Which one are you? Where are you today? Are you sitting back and waiting for something, a sign or something to change? Are you the one to bring the change because you're the one who knows it needs to happen? There's a great story you've all heard, David versus Goliath. That story is in the Hebrew Bible, and no matter what time in your life you came across that story, I'm going to invite you to hear it a little bit differently tonight. Of course, it's the story of the Israelites versus the Philistines, and yes, there is a giant involved. It's Goliath, and a young boy in his teens who had more ego going for him and more self-assurance than all of the army of the Israelites. And he came to tell King Saul that Philistine, Goliath, who was chanting curses and taunts to the holy army of God, of the God of Israel, and taunting to send warrior out to do battle with him on behalf of, so that maybe the armies don't even have to clash. They'll just duke it out there, and that'll be the deciding factor. And there was no takers on the Israelite side. David tries to go and make his case to Saul that send me out there. I'll take care of that guy. Here's what we can learn as we listen to this story about what we can know about ourselves in the 21st century that doesn't require a battle or death or an army. It just requires that we know who we are. You see, David knew what he believed. He knew the power of the living God. He knew that God. He knew that it came through his own being. He knew that. It was embedded in him. He knew what he was good at and what he could do. He knew its limitations, but he also knew what he could do. And David says to King Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, I struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Have you ever had that much power coming through you that you could say something like that in the moment that is right before you, in the moment that something is standing in front of you, big and intimidating, that you suddenly rise up and you know who you are? You know what you have to bring, and suddenly the fear starts to fall away. David also knew what didn't fit him. Because Saul, finding nobody else, no one even beginning to talk like this young guy was talking, decides that he's going to send him out. And to salve his own conscience, one thinks, he dressed David in his own tunic and in his own armor. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he wasn't used to them. And finally, he said, I can't go in these because I'm not used to them. And so he took them off. He didn't try to put on someone else's bravery, someone else's defensiveness, somebody else's ideas, somebody else's advice about what he should or shouldn't do, what his limits were, even as well-intentioned as they may be. He knew where his power came from, and he did not need a hindrance to that power. David centered himself in service to the God that he understood. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. David saw victory was assured, though the odds themselves had not changed. Are you facing a great, big, hairy, scary thing? If that's something that is on your doorstep, something that is in your yard, something not far from where you are, you remember that you are equal to whatever comes into your life, or it would not be in your life. You bring it. You are it. And you do not do this work alone. The inner strength to overcome challenge requires that you go within. Audre Lorde says, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid. That's what you use if you're the one who sits before you step out, who sits and waits maybe sometimes a little too long, where you can just say, yes, I'm afraid, but that isn't the reason not to go, not to do, not to act, not to speak up, not to make the appointment, not to ask for an audience with somebody I need to reconcile with or speak a truth to. Father Bede Griffith says, so much of modern life is a feverish anticipation of future activity and excitement. We have to learn to step back from this into the freedom and possibility of the present. The freedom and possibility of the present. Too often we're run by the past, which has no bearing on what's happening right here, right now, if we can see ourselves as different. Which do we choose? Stepping out or holding back and going within? David Steindl-Rest offers this as a practice. He says, try pausing right before and right after undertaking a new action, even something simple like putting a key in a lock to open a door. To pause before you put the key in and intentionally consider what you're about to do rather than acting unconsciously. Stay present to what it is that you're doing. Stay in the moment. Such pauses take a brief moment, yet they have the effect of decompressing time and centering you. A moment can be an eternity, a revelation, where insight happens and suddenly you see yourself in a greater context, or suddenly the words come to you, or suddenly your heart opens and you see the other differently than you did just a moment before. That is the powerful, transforming moment all that is possible opens to you, and you become a new creation in that moment. From Philippians 3:13-14, Paul says, "Brothers, I do not regard myself as having laid hold of it yet, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and reaching forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." Now, there's a man who knew what he was here for and who he was about and who he was serving. It was Paul, Tarsus. The prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. If we can open ourselves to this upward call of a greater vision of being more than we thought ourselves capable of, one step at a time, we move with guidance. I love the word guidance. Not only is it to guide us, but I love the second syllable because I think of it really as a dance. Truly, think of it that way. This is your great partner in the universe to dance with. You take a step, you take a step back. You take a step, you take a step back. You move back, you move back, you move forward, you move forward. You do it as you see it. You know that you are never alone. You're being guided. You're kept upright. You're being moved across, moved into the next thing. You're not alone. Take a step and wait. Take a step and wait. Doesn't that sound like a dance? Goethe, German writer and philosopher, said this: "Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness concerning all acts of initiative and creation. There is one elementary truth, in ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, and it is this: that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too." It's waiting on you. It's waiting on you. Nothing moves until we do. All sorts of things, he goes on to say, occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from that decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance which no man could have dreamed would have come his way. Whatever you can do, or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. Or if you're the one who needs to stand back a bit, consider these wise words from Brother David Steindl-Rast. He says, "Each string of a wind harp responds with a different note to the same breeze. What activity makes you personally resonate most strongly, most deeply with the wind of the Spirit that blows where it wills?" If you're in need of stepping out of your ego and out of your power and strength and moving personal power and moving back into spirit, into something, then fall back into that knowing that when the impulse arises from your heart, not your head, that will be the moment to move. And from Isaiah chapter 30, whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, "This is the way. Walk in it." Are you listening? The first step, the dance, is yours to take. God bless you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.